Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Welcome back to my channel. Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. The air inside the ballroom of the Tennessean Hotel was thick with the scent of money, pine, and expensive perfume. It was the annual Christmas party for Marble City Fund, and from the looks of it, business was booming. Crystal chandeliers dripped light onto a sea of tailored suits and glittering evening gowns. Waiters wove through the crowd with trays of champagne, their movements as smooth and practiced as the jazz trio playing in the corner. I felt a little out of place. My world was one of blueprints and steel beams, not stock portfolios and leveraged buyouts. But I was here for Fiona, my Fiona. I scanned the room, a stupid, proud grin on my face, looking for the woman who made my world turn. And then I saw her. She was standing near the towering Christmas tree, a vision in a sapphire blue dress that hugged her curves in all the right ways. Her auburn hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, and she was laughing, her head tilted back just so. She was the most beautiful woman in the room. She was always the most beautiful woman in any room. But it wasn't her beauty that stopped me dead in my tracks. It wasn't the way the light caught her smile. It was the necklace. Draped around her delicate throat was a string of diamonds, not costume jewelry, not some tasteful little pendant. This was a serious piece, a river of ice that sparkled with a cold, hard fire under the ballroom lights. It was the kind of necklace you see on celebrities at the Oscars, the kind that costs more than my truck, more than a year of my salary, probably. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I knew our finances down to the last penny. I'm an architect. Details are my life. We were comfortable, sure, but we weren't Diamond River comfortable. I hadn't bought it for her. Her parents couldn't have. So where in the hell did it come from? As if on cue, a man stepped up beside her. Trevor Sterling, her boss. He was exactly what you'd expect a hotshot fund manager to be. Tall, impossibly handsome, with a salesman's perfect smile and hair that looked like it had been styled by a team of experts. He leaned in and murmured something in her ear. And I saw it. The look in Fiona's eyes as she glanced up at him. It wasn't the look an employee gives her boss. There was no professional deference, no polite distance. It was intimate. A shared secret flickered between them. A current of familiarity that was so potent I could feel it from across the room. His hand rested for a fraction of a second on the small of her back, a gesture of casual possession. His gaze then dropped to the necklace, and his smile widened, a smirk of self-satisfaction. He had bought it for her. The thought hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. The clinking glasses, the smooth jazz, the buzz of conversation, it all faded into a dull roar. The festive ballroom suddenly felt like a cage, the air suffocating. In that single, sickening moment, the foundation of my world, the world I had so carefully designed and built around my love for this woman, cracked. A fine hairline fracture at first, but I knew, with the terrifying certainty of an architect who sees a fatal flaw in his own design, that it was only a matter of time before the whole damn thing came crashing down. I tried to shake it off. Don't be ridiculous, Marcus. It's a bonus, a company gift. You're overthinking this. But my gut, that primal instinct that had saved me from bad investments and structurally unsound buildings, was screaming at me. I made my way through the crowd, my movements stiff, my smile feeling like a mask of dried paint. "There you are," Fiona said, turning to me. Her smile was bright, but now I could see the strain at the edges. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine. "Marcus, you know my boss, Trevor Sterling." "Marcus, good to see you," Sterling said, extending a hand. His grip was firm, confident. His eyes held a flicker of amusement, a glint of something that felt like a challenge. "Fiona is an absolute rock star. We don't know what we'd do without her." "I can imagine," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. My eyes were fixed on the necklace. I couldn't look away. It felt like it was burning a hole in her skin. Fiona's hand flew to her throat, a nervous, self-conscious gesture. "Oh, isn't it stunning? It was a Christmas bonus from the company for top performers." "A very generous bonus," I said, letting the words hang in the air. Sterling just chuckled. We believe in rewarding our best and brightest, and Fiona, well, she's the brightest of them all. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. They had a story ready. The realization was another jab to the gut. This wasn't a recent development. This was a well-established fact, a part of their world that I had just stumbled into. I was the outsider, the clueless husband at the company Christmas party. The rest of the night was a blur. I feigned a headache, and we left early. The drive home was silent, the air in the car charged with everything that wasn't being said. The necklace lay on her collarbone, each diamond a tiny, cold star in the darkness, mocking me. Back at our house, the house I had designed for us, for our family, she took it off and placed it in a velvet box I had never seen before. She didn't say a word about it, and I didn't ask. I didn't know how. That night, lying in bed next to her, the space between us felt like a chasm. Her breathing was even, peaceful. She was asleep, or pretending to be. But I was wide awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying that one look, that one touch, that one impossibly expensive necklace. My world wasn't just cracked, it was crumbling. And I was standing right in the middle of the rubble. The house was my masterpiece. Not my biggest project, not my most acclaimed, but the one that mattered. A modern craftsman style on a quiet, tree-lined street in a Knoxville suburb. I de-designed every inch of it myself. I obsessed over the flow of natural light in the morning, the exact height of the kitchen island where our 80-year-old daughter Olivia did her homework, the way the back porch caught the evening breeze. It was more than wood and drywall. It was a physical manifestation of our life, our future. It was supposed to be our fortress. Lying awake that night, the silence of the house was deafening. My mind, a frantic pinball machine, kept ricocheting back to the past, searching for clues I must have missed. Was I that blind? I thought back to 5 years ago, when Fiona first got the job at Marble City Fund. I was knee-deep in launching my own architecture firm, working 80-hour weeks, fueled by caffeine and ambition. "It's perfect, Marcus," she'd said, her eyes shining with excitement. She was wearing a simple yellow sundress that day, her hair down. "It's just a senior secretary position. Good pay, great benefits, and normal hours. It'll give us some stability while you get your company off the ground." "A secretary? Fee, you're smarter than that. You have a business degree." "It's not just a secretary," she'd insisted, her tone a little defensive. "They call them executive assistants. It's a support role for one of the top managers. Less stress. I want to be there for Olivia, you know? I don't want to be a corporate drone who never sees her kid." It made sense. It sounded noble, even. She was sacrificing her own career ambitions for our family. For me. I felt a surge of love and guilt. So I worked harder. I took on extra projects, stayed at the office until my eyes burned. Also, she could have that less stress job, so our perfect picture could remain intact. And it was perfect. Or, so it seemed, Fiona was the quintessential supermom. She packed Olivia's lunches with little notes tucked inside. She volunteered for the PTA. Our home was always immaculate, filled with the smell of freshly baked cookies or whatever new recipe she was trying. On weekends, we'd go for hikes in the Smokies or have family movie nights, all three of us piled on the couch under a single blanket. I remember coming home late one night, utterly exhausted from a deadline. The lights were dim. Olivia was asleep. Fiona was on the sofa, a book in her lap, waiting for me. She had a plate of my favorite pasta warming in the oven. "You work too hard," she'd murmured, wrapping her arms around my neck. Her embrace felt like coming home. "It's for us," I'd said, burying my face in her hair. "So you and Liv can have everything." "We already have everything, Marcus," she'd whispered. "We have each other." Was it all a lie? Was that woman on the couch, the perfect wife, the loving mother, just an act? A role she was playing? My mind reeled. It felt like discovering the load-bearing walls of my own house were made of cardboard. I thought about the changes, the subtle shifts I'd dismissed as unimportant, the expensive new clothes she'd started buying. "The bonus was amazing this year, honey," she'd trill, pulling a designer dress from a shopping bag. The girls' weekends that became more frequent. The way she'd guard her phone, angling it away from me when a text came in. I'd chalked it up to office culture. She was in a world of wealth. Of course, her tastes would become more refined. She needed to vent with her friends. Her job, even if less stress, was still a job. The phone? I trusted her. Trust was the bedrock of our marriage. To question it felt like a betrayal in itself. What a fool I was. I was the architect who admired the facade without ever checking the foundation. I looked over at her sleeping form. Her chest rose and fell in a steady, peaceful rhythm. The moonlight filtering through the blinds cast a soft glow on her face, erasing any lines of stress or deceit. She looked innocent. She looked like the woman I'd married, but the image was shattered. The perfect picture was now a forgery, and I was seeing the crude brushstrokes for the first time. The loving wife was a stranger. The fortress I'd built was a house of cards, and the wind was picking up. I lay there, cold and hollow, listening to the slow, steady ticking of the clock on the bedside table, each tick a countdown to the inevitable collapse. The next few days were a special kind of hell. I moved through my life like a ghost, a spectator in my own home. I'd smile at Olivia, ask about her day at school, help her with her math homework, all while a storm of acid churned in my gut. I looked at Fiona, trying to see past the wife I loved to the woman who was lying to me. But the two images kept blurring together, driving me mad. I couldn't confront her again. Not yet. Not without more than just a gut feeling and a too expensive necklace. A gut feeling can be wrong. A gut feeling can be paranoia. I'm a man of logic, of evidence. I needed proof. I needed to build a case, just like I would for a zoning board presentation. My search began late one Tuesday night. Fiona was asleep, a deep, untroubled sleep I couldn't remember ever having. Olivia was tucked in her bed, dreaming of ponies and playgrounds. The house was finally, completely silent. I went to my office, the spare bedroom ID converted into a sanctuary of blueprints and drafting tables, and shut the door. The air felt heavy, conspiratorial. I started with the bank statements. We had a joint account for household expenses, but we also had our own separate accounts for personal spending. It was her idea. For independence, she'd said. I'd thought it was modern, healthy. Now it seemed sinister. I logged into our joint account first. Everything was normal. Mortgage, utilities, groceries. Then I braced myself and accessed her personal account. She'd given me the password years ago in case of an emergency. I'm not proud of what I did, but the need to know was a physical craving, a hunger that gnawed at me. Her salary from Marble City Fund was deposited every 2 weeks, just as I expected. But then I saw them. The miscellaneous deposits. They were large, sporadic, and always labeled simply MCF bonus. There was one for $10,000 2 months ago, another for $15,000 before that, and going back a year, a massive one for $50,000. $50,000. My heart hammered against my ribs. What kind of senior secretary gets a $50,000 bonus? A bonus that she never mentioned? A bonus that didn't go into our joint savings, or toward the mortgage, or into Olivia's college fund. It sat in her personal account, being chipped away at by purchases from designer boutiques ID never heard of. The pieces were starting to click into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Next, I went to our bedroom, moving with the stealth of a cat burglar in my own home. I opened her side of the closet. The scent of her perfume, a scent I used to love, now made me feel nauseous. I ran my hand along the rows of expensive dresses and silk blouses. Way in the back, behind a stack of old sweaters, my fingers brushed against a shoebox. Not a shoebox, a gift box, from a high-end lingerie store downtown. My hands were trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in black tissue paper, was a set of lingerie. It was fire engine red lace, impossibly delicate and unapologetically provocative. It was the kind of thing a man buys for his mistress, not what a woman wears for her husband of 10 years. It was beautiful, and it was vulgar, and it was a stake through my heart. She had never worn anything like this for me. Our intimacy had become comfortable, predictable. This was for someone else. This was for him. I placed the box back exactly where I found it, my movements mechanical. Every instinct screamed at me to wake her up, to throw the box at her, to demand an explanation. But what would that accomplish? More lies? More practiced tears? No, I needed more. The architect in me needed to see the complete blueprint of her betrayal before I took a sledgehammer to it. I returned to my office and sat in the dark, the glow of the monitor illuminating my face. The bank statement was still on the screen. The numbers, the dates, the lies, they all swam before my eyes. The necklace, the bonuses, the lingerie. They were all mismatched pieces, parts of a puzzle I never knew existed. But now I could see the edges starting to fit together. And the image they were forming was ugly. It was an architecture of deceit, a structure built on a foundation of lies, with my trust, my love, my life as the unsuspecting ground it was built upon. And I knew, as I sat there in the crushing silence, that I couldn't just walk away from it. I had to understand its design, every sordid detail. Only then could I figure out how to bring it all down. Finding Isaac Bell was the first deliberate move I made in my new secret war. It took 2 days of discreet digging online. I found his name on an old press release from Marble City Fund, listed as a junior IT systems administrator. A few more clicks led me to a LinkedIn profile that was a digital ghost town. His employment at MCF ended abruptly 8 months ago, with no new job listed since. It smelled of a messy departure, maybe an NDA and a severance check to keep him quiet. He was a loose thread. I had to pull it. I sent him a message on a secure app using a burner account. I need to talk to you about Marble City Fund. I think you were treated unfairly. I can help. Meet me. I gave him the address of a small, forgotten coffee shop on the industrial side of town, the kind of place where conversations go to die. He showed up 20 minutes late, looking over his shoulder as if he expected a team of corporate assassins to rappel down from the ceiling. He was young, probably mid-20s, with thinning hair and the pale, nervous complexion of someone who spends too much time in server rooms. He clutched a worn backpack to his chest like a life preserver. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. He didn't sit down. "My name is Marcus Vance. My wife, Fiona, works at Marble City Fund." His eyes widened in recognition, then darted away. "I can't talk about them. I signed papers." "I know," I said, keeping my voice low and even. I slid a file folder across the table. It contained a printout of Fiona's bonus deposits and a copy of the news article about his sudden departure from the company, which was framed as a restructuring. "I know they pay for silence, but I'm not looking to get you in trouble. I'm looking for the truth. My life has been turned upside down, Isaac. I just need to understand." I leaned forward, letting him see the raw, sleep-deprived honesty in my eyes. "She's my wife. We have a daughter, and I think I'm losing my mind." Something in my voice, the pure, unvarnished pain, seemed to break through his fear. He finally slumped into the chair opposite me. "You have no idea," he breathed, rubbing his face with trembling hands. "It's not just your wife, man. It's all of them." And then he told me. The words spilled out of him in a torrent, a confession he'd clearly been holding in for months. He told me about the unspoken order, the PA system. "It's not a secret. Not really," he said, his voice laced with a bitter cynicism. "Everyone inside knows. The personal assistants. They're not just secretaries. It's a tradition, goes back decades. Each of the fund managers gets to pick one. They're paid a massive off-the-books bonus. And in return..." He trailed off, swallowing hard. "In return for what?" I pressed, though I already knew the answer. I just needed to hear the word. "Sex," Isaac said, the word landing on the table between us like a dead thing. "It's consensual. That's their whole legal shield. The women can say no, but with the kind of money they throw around, most don't." He described the PA hours. Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 4 o'clock to 5 p.m. The office doors of the managers would lock. It was an open secret, a joke among the lower-level staff. The managers would walk out at 5 p.m. looking smug. The PAs would emerge a few minutes later, looking flushed or sometimes, he said, looking empty. "Fiona Vance. She's Trevor Sterling's PA," he confirmed, his voice gentle as if delivering a diagnosis. "She's been with him for years. She's not a rookie in this, Mr. Vance. She's a veteran." The room tilted. My coffee went cold in my hands. It wasn't just an affair. An affair is a messy human failing. This was a system, a transaction, a corporate policy written in invisible ink. My wife wasn't just cheating on me. She was a participant, a willing cog in a machine of institutionalized prostitution. "Why did they fire you?" I asked, my voice a hollow rasp. "I saw something I wasn't supposed to," he admitted, An email chain between Cameron Thorne, he's the old man, the one who started it all, and the firm's lawyers. They were discussing the bonus structure and how to best shield it from financial audits and potential litigation. It was a smoking gun. Thorne found out I saw it. 2 days later, my logins were disabled, and a security guard was escorting me out with a box of my stuff and a very thick legal document to sign. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of fear and a desperate need for vindication. I wanted to go to the press, but they'd ruin me. They have lawyers that could bury me in legal fees until I die. I have a mom with medical bills. I had to take the money. My mind was racing, the architect's logic clicking and whirring, processing this horrifying new data. The bonuses, the lingerie, the locked doors from 4 to 5 p.m. It was a complete blueprint of depravity. And his last words hung in the air, echoing in my mind. She's not a victim. She's a veteran. Fiona wasn't just caught in a trap. She had thrived in it. She had built her career on it, furnished her closet with it, and paid for our comfortable life with the proceeds of her degradation. And she had looked me in the eye, day after day, and lied. I slid the file folder back into my briefcase. I looked at the scared young man across from me. "Thank you, Isaac," I said, my voice eerily calm. "You haven't just given me the truth. You've given me a weapon." I stood up and left him there, nursing his cold coffee. As I walked out into the gray afternoon, the world looked different. The anger and pain were still there, but they were crystallizing into something else. Something cold, hard, and sharp. It was purpose. I let the knowledge fester inside me for 2 days. 2 days of sharing a bed with a stranger, of sitting across the dinner table from the woman who sold pieces of herself between 4 and 5 o'clock, 3 days a week. The truth was a toxic substance in my veins, and I could feel the poison spreading, turning my love to ash, my sadness to a cold, hard rage. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The performance was over. It was a Thursday evening. The rain was lashing against the windows of our perfect house, a fitting soundtrack for the storm about to break inside. Olivia was at a sleepover at her friend's house, a small mercy I was deeply grateful for. Fiona was in the living room, curled on the cream-colored sofa I'd chosen, scrolling through her phone. She was wearing silk pajamas, looking relaxed, beautiful, and completely oblivious. I walked in and stood in the middle of the room. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence stretch, letting the weight of my presence fill the space. She finally looked up, a slight annoyance on her face. "What is it, Marcus? You've been moping around for days. You're starting to worry me." "Worry me?" I let out a short, harsh laugh that sounded foreign even to me. "That's rich." I dropped a manila folder onto the glass coffee table between us. It landed with a heavy thud. Her eyes flickered to the folder, then back to my face. A flicker of fear, a brief flash of guilt before the mask of cool indifference slipped back into place. "What's this?" "Open it," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Her movements were hesitant as she reached for it. She pulled out the contents one by one, the printouts of her bank statements, the incriminating bonuses circled in red, a photo ID taken of the red lace lingerie in its box, and finally, a single sheet of paper on which I had written 3 simple time slots. Monday, 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Wednesday, 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Friday, 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Her face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks until she was the color of bleached bone. Her breath hitched. She looked up at me, her eyes wide with a desperate, cornered animal's panic. "Marcus, I can explain." "Can you, Fiona?" I shot back, the control I'd been holding on to finally snapping. "Can you explain the $50,000 bonus you forgot to mention? Can you explain the lingerie you've never worn for me? Or should we start with what exactly happens during your PA hours with Trevor Sterling?" The name hung in the air like a gunshot. The denial came first, weak and reflexive. "It's not what you think. Trevor is just my boss. The bonuses, they're for performance. The company is very generous." "Generous?" I stepped closer, my shadow falling over her. "Don't insult my intelligence, Fiona. I know everything. I know about the system. I know about the unspoken order. I know what you are." That's when the tears started. Big, theatrical crocodile tears rolling down her perfect cheeks. She crumpled, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with sobs. It was a good performance. I might have even bought it a week ago. "I'm so sorry, Marcus," she cried. "I was going to tell you. I was trapped. I didn't know how to get out. He has so much power over me." She was trying to paint herself as the victim. It was a smart play, but I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. "Trapped?" I repeated the word, tasting its bitterness. "Were you trapped when you deposited those checks, Fiona? Were you trapped when you bought that dress, that necklace? You weren't trapped. You were thriving. Isaac Bell told me. You're a veteran," he said. Her head snapped up, the tears instantly gone, replaced by a flash of pure fury. "You spoke to him? That little rat? You went behind my back? You want to talk about going behind my back?" I roared, the sound echoing in the high-ceilinged room. "You have been living a double life under my roof. In my bed. You let me work myself to the bone so you could have your less stress job, which was just a fucking euphemism for being a high-priced whore." She flinched as if I had struck her. Then her face hardened. The victim mask fell away. The furious wife mask dissolved, and what was left was cold, hard, and utterly unrecognizable. She stood up, her chin held high, the silk of her pajamas whispering as she moved. She looked me dead in the eye, and the woman I had loved for more than a decade delivered the final fatal blow. "You would never understand," she said, her voice dripping with a chilling mix of pity and contempt. "You live in your little world of blueprints and right angles. You have no idea what it takes to get ahead in the real world, what it takes to have the things we have." She gestured around our beautiful, expensive living room. This doesn't come from just working hard. This is business, and you're just not built for it." That was it. That was the moment my heart, which had been cracking and crumbling, finally shattered into dust. It wasn't the lies. It wasn't the affair. It was the condescension, the utter lack of remorse, the revelation that she saw me not as her partner, her husband, but as a naive fool who was holding her back. In her eyes, I wasn't the man she had betrayed. I was just the cost of doing business. "Get out," I said, my voice hollow. "What? This is my house too, Marcus." "Not anymore," I said, turning my back on her. "Get your things. Get out of my house." I walked out of the room, out of the life we had built together, and didn't look back. The sound of her screaming my name followed me, but it was just noise. The wall between us hadn't just cracked. It had been demolished, and I was finally seeing the ugly truth on the other side. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. The rain hammered against the windshield, the wipers fighting a losing battle, blurring the world into streaks of red and white light. The city, usually so familiar, felt alien. Every street corner held a memory, a ghost of a life that was no longer mine. My hands were clamped around the steering wheel, my knuckles white. Fiona's final words echoed in my head, a cruel, relentless loop. "You would never understand. This is business." It wasn't an apology. It was a justification, a verdict. She had judged me and found me lacking. I ended up parked by the Tennessee River, at a desolate, gravel-strewn overlook I hadn't been to in years. The city lights twinkled on the far bank, distant and indifferent. The river itself was a churning black void swallowing the rain. I killed the engine and the headlights, plunging the truck into darkness. The silence was a physical weight. And in that silence, the pain hit me. It wasn't a clean wound. It was a messy, tearing, eviscerating agony. It was the shame of being so blind, the humiliation of being the clueless husband, the fury at being so thoroughly played. But underneath it all, there was a grief so profound, it felt like a part of my soul had been amputated without anesthetic. The future I had designed, growing old with Fiona, watching Olivia grow up, the quiet comfort of a shared life was gone. It had been an illusion, a beautiful lie I had told myself. I punched the steering wheel, once, twice, a guttural roar ripping from my throat. It did nothing. The pain was still there, a living thing coiling in my chest. I thought about ending it, just for a second. The thought was a dark, seductive whisper. Drive into the river. It would all be over. No more pain, no more humiliation. But then an image flashed in my mind. Olivia, her bright, laughing eyes. The way she'd wrap her little arms around my neck for a hug. The complete and utter trust she had in me. Her dad. What would happen to her? She'd be left with a mother who saw life as a series of dirty transactions and a father who was a coward. No, I couldn't do that to her. I couldn't let them win. Them. It wasn't just Fiona. It was Trevor Sterling, with his predator's smile. It was the entire rotten edifice of Marble City Fund. They had taken my life, chewed it up and spit it out, all while patting themselves on the back for being so clever. A new feeling began to stir in the wreckage of my grief. It was cold, clear, and powerful. It pushed aside the pain, cauterized the wound. It was rage. But not the hot, blinding rage from before. This was different. This was architectural. It was the calm, focused anger of a builder who sees a structure that is fundamentally corrupt, a building that needs to be condemned and torn down to its foundations. I wouldn't just leave. I wouldn't just file for divorce and slink away with my tail between my legs. That's what they expected. That's what the naive husband would do. No, I was going to burn their world to the ground. Fiona had said I wasn't built for their world. She was wrong. I was going to use the very skills that defined me, my precision, my attention to detail, my ability to see the structural weaknesses in any design, and I was going to turn them into weapons. They had a system, an order. I was going to design its collapse. I sat there for hours, the rain my only company as the storm inside me subsided and settled into a glacial calm. The pain was still there, a dull, permanent ache. But now, it had a purpose. It was fuel. I started the truck. The engine rumbled to life, a low growl in the dark. As I pulled away from the river, I felt like a different man. The husband, the fool, the victim I left him behind on that gravel overlook. The man driving back into the city was someone else entirely. He was an architect of ruin, and he was just getting started. The next morning, the world felt painfully sharp and oversaturated, like a photograph with the contrast turned all the way up. The sky was a washed-out gray. The coffee I brewed tasted like dirt. My own reflection in the bathroom mirror was a stranger, a man with hollowed-out eyes and a new, hard set to his jaw. I knew my first step had to be legal. I needed a shark, a killer. I spent the morning researching the top divorce attorneys in Knoxville. I scrolled past the smiling faces on billboards, the ones who promised amicable solutions. I didn't want amicable. I wanted a weapon. That's how I found Angela Hayes. Her website was different. It was minimalist, black and white. No smiling photos, just her name, her credentials, and a single tagline: Strategic Counsel for Complex Separations. Her bio mentioned she'd started her career as a corporate litigator in Atlanta, fighting giants. She sounded less like a divorce lawyer and more like a demolitions expert. She was perfect. Her office was in a sleek, modern glass building downtown, a world away from the folksy law firms I'd been seeing. The interior was just as minimalist as her website: polished concrete floors, glass walls, and stark modern furniture. There was no clutter, no sentimentality. It was a space designed for clear, cold logic. Angela Hayes herself was the same. She walked into the conference room, and my first thought was that she was a force of nature. She was probably in her late 30s, with sharp, intelligent dark eyes, and black hair cut in a severe, professional bob that framed a face that was striking rather than pretty. She wore a tailored charcoal pantsuit that radiated competence. She didn't offer a sympathetic smile. She just gave a firm handshake and a direct look. "Mr. Vance," she said, her voice crisp and low. "Thank you for coming in. Your message said your situation was complicated." She sat opposite me at a large glass table, opened a sleek laptop, and folded her hands, her gaze unwavering. "Tell me everything, and don't leave out the parts that make you look bad. I can't build a strategy on an incomplete blueprint." The architectural metaphor, coming from her, was disarming. I took a deep breath and I told her everything: the Christmas party, the necklace, the bank statements, the lingerie, my conversation with Isaac Bell, the PA system, the confrontation with Fiona, her final, soul-crushing words. I laid out the facts logically, chronologically, the way I would present a project brief. I kept my emotions in check, delivering the story of my life's implosion with the detached calm of an engineer reporting a structural failure. Angela listened without interruption. She didn't take notes. She just watched me, her dark eyes missing nothing. When I finally finished, the silence in the room was absolute. I expected a legal assessment, a discussion of assets and custody. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and said, "She called you naive for living in a world of right angles. But it's that precise, logical world that's going to let us tear hers apart. I was stunned. I had expected legal advice. I got a declaration of war. "This isn't just a divorce, Mr. Vance," she continued, her voice taking on a new intensity. "What you've described, this is a systemic conspiracy. It's racketeering disguised as corporate culture. It's quid pro quo sexual harassment on an institutional level. They've built a fortress of NDAs and settlement checks, and they think they're untouchable." "Can we do anything about it?" I asked, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. A slow, dangerous smile touched her lips for the first time. It transformed her face. "Doing something about it is my specialty. A standard divorce? We can get you custody of your daughter and half the assets. Easy. But that's not what you want, is it?" She saw right through me. She saw the rage simmering beneath my calm exterior. "No," I said. "It's not." "You want to burn it down," she stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "To the ground," I confirmed. "Good," she said, turning to her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. "Because a case like this, with the right leverage, can be explosive. They've insulated themselves from the inside, but they're vulnerable from the outside. Public opinion, the press, federal regulators. We don't just file for divorce. We launch a full-scale assault." For the first time since I'd seen that necklace, I felt like I could breathe again. The suffocating weight of victimhood was lifting. In this cold, sterile conference room, sitting across from this sharp, formidable woman, I wasn't just a heartbroken husband anymore. I was a client, and we were about to go to war. The next 2 days were a blur of strategy sessions in Angela's glass-walled conference room. The place became my new headquarters, a war room where the first drafts of my revenge were drawn up. Coffee replaced sleep. Legal pads filled with scribbled notes replaced blueprints. Angela was a master strategist. She moved with a purpose and clarity that I, as an architect, deeply admired. She broke down the fortress of Marble City Fund piece by piece, identifying every vulnerability, every legal fissure we could exploit. "Their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness," she explained, pacing in front of a large whiteboard. She'd drawn a crude diagram of the company's power structure, with a name in a circle at the top. Cameron Thorne. "Thorne is the old guard," she said, tapping his name with a black marker. "He built this system. He believes in it. But he's arrogant. He thinks the old rules still apply, that money and power can buy silence indefinitely." Beneath Thorne, she drew another circle. Trevor Sterling. Sterling is the new breed, flashy, reckless, has the face of the firm's success and probably its biggest liability. Has sloppy. The necklace was a sloppy, arrogant move. Men like him always leave a trail. She drew lines branching out from Sterling. One led to a box labeled Fiona Vance. "Our leverage starts with your divorce," she said, turning to me. "We file on the grounds of adultery. We subpoena their financial records, their emails, their calendars. We'll frame it as a standard discovery process. They'll try to block it, but they can't. It's our legal right." "They'll just lie," I said, the bitterness fresh. "Let them," Angela replied with a thin smile. "Lying under oath is perjury. That's a crime. Every lie they tell is another brick we can use to build our case against them. We're not just looking for evidence of the affair. We're looking for evidence of the system. We need to connect the bonuses directly to the PA hours." She circled back to Isaac Bell. "Your IT guy is our key. If he can get us any of that data he saw, that email chain, server logs, anything that shows a pattern, we can bypass the discovery process and go straight for the jugular." My mind was firing on all cylinders. This wasn't just about emotion anymore. This was a design problem, a complex, multi-layered demolition project. "It can't just be a legal attack," I said, standing up and walking to the whiteboard. I took the marker from her hand. "That's too slow. It happens behind closed doors. They need to be destroyed publicly. Their reputation is their most valuable asset." I drew a new set of boxes on the side, labeling them Media, Regulators, SEC, and Public Opinion. "We architect a narrative," I said, the words flowing out of me. "We control the flow of information. Phase 1 is a leak, anonymous, just enough to get the financial reporters sniffing around. Something about irregular bonus structures. We create a tremor." Angela watched me, a look of profound respect in her eyes. Phase 2? Phase 2, I continued, is the earthquake. Once the media is primed and the SEC is paying attention, we give them the hard evidence, the emails, the schedules. We expose the whole rotten system. We don't just make it a story about cheating husbands. We make it a story about corporate corruption and the exploitation of women. We make it toxic. I looked at Angela. They built their empire on a foundation of secrets and lies. We'll bring it down with a foundation of truth. I stopped and looked at what I had drawn. It was no longer just a legal strategy. It was a blueprint, a detailed multi-phase plan for total annihilation. It was clean, logical, and ruthless. I looked at my hands. They were steady. The man who had been shattered just days ago was gone. In his place was someone I barely recognized, someone forged in the fire of betrayal. As an architect, I said, my voice low and steady, meeting her gaze, I'm at my best when I'm building things. I looked back at the board, at my design for their downfall. But I also know exactly where to place the charges to bring the whole building down. Angela's lips curved into that rare, dangerous smile again. Then let's get to work, Mr. Vance, she said. We have a demolition to plan. The war room, Angela's conference room, became my second home. Our first objective was clear. We needed the ammunition Isaac Bell had talked about. Convincing him to dive back into the digital lion's den was the hard part. We met him again, this time in the anonymous back booth of a 24-hour diner that smelled of stale coffee and desperation. He was even jumpier than before. I can't, he said, wringing his hands. They have monitoring software. If I access those old servers, even remotely, it'll trigger alarms. They'll know. They'll come after me. They won't know it's you, Angela said, her voice calm and reassuring. She slid a burner laptop across the vinyl tabletop. This is running through multiple VPNs, bouncing off servers in 3 different countries. By the time their system flags it, the trail will be colder than a polar bear's toenails. You'll be a ghost. I pushed a thick envelope toward him. This is for your mother's medical bills for the next year. And once this is over, there will be a permanent, high-paying job waiting for you at a new firm I'm starting. You'll be the head of IT. No more taking orders from slime balls like Thorne. It was a combination of reassurance, bribery, and a promise of a future. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the fear warring with the deep-seated desire for payback. The desire for a life where he wasn't constantly looking over his shoulder. What do you need, specifically? He finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Everything, I said. The email chain you saw between Thorne and the lawyers. Calendars for Thorne, Sterling, and the other managers, especially any appointments marked private or blocked out during PA hours. Payroll records for the PAs, specifically the bonus payments. We need to tie the time to the money. The next 3 nights were sleepless. Isaac worked from his cramped apartment, with me and Angela on a secure video call, guiding him, coaching him, our own screens filled with the architectural diagrams of Marble City's server network. It felt like a high-stakes heist. My heart was in my throat every time Isaac's cursor hovered over a protected file. The progress bar on the data transfer crawled at a glacial pace. Each percentage point felt like an eternity. On the 3rd night, close to 4 a.m., he hit the jackpot. I'm in, he whispered, his voice hoarse. I've got the primary archive. The one they think is air-gapped. On our screens, folders bloomed. Emails, spreadsheets, calendars going back 5 years. It was all there. We saw the coded language. Private meeting TSFV on Trevor Sterling's calendar, always at 4 p.m. We saw the corresponding bonus payment to Fiona Vance approved by Cameron Thorne the following week. It wasn't just a pattern. It was a goddamn ledger. And then we found it. The Holy Grail. The email chain Isaac had mentioned. Cameron Thorne writing to the firm's lead counsel, PA compensation structure. As discussed, we need to continue routing these bonuses through the performance pool to maintain legal deniability. Frame it as discretionary awards for exceptional client-facing support. The optics are everything. We can't have any paper trail that explicitly links payment to the supplemental duties. Supplemental duties. Angela read aloud, her voice dripping with contempt. That's what they call it. We've got him, I said, a wave of cold triumph washing over me. We've got them all. We spent the rest of the night downloading, encrypting, and creating multiple backups on secure drives. As the sun began to cast a weak, gray light over the city, we had it. A digital vault filled with enough evidence to burn Marble City Fund to the ground. Each file was a stick of dynamite, and I was the one holding the detonator. Phase 1 of the public assault didn't begin with a bang but a whisper. A quiet, insidious poison injected directly into the heart of the enemy's camp. Angela and I knew that before we went public, we needed to create chaos behind the scenes. We needed to turn their homes, their supposed sanctuaries, into battlegrounds. From the data we'd collected, we had the names and home addresses of the other senior fund managers, the ones with their own PAs, their own sordid 4 p.m. appointments. We cross-referenced them with public records to find the names of their wives. These women, living in their sprawling suburban homes, driving their luxury SUVs, were just as blind as I had been. They were the unknowing beneficiaries of this rotten system. It was time for a wake-up call. I created a new, untraceable email address. The name was simple, gender-neutral, a concerned colleague. The email itself was a masterpiece of minimalist psychological warfare. No accusations, no evidence. Just a single, perfectly crafted question designed to plant a seed of doubt that would be impossible to ignore. Late one Tuesday night, from a public library computer several towns over, I sent it. The subject line was simply, a question. The body of the email read, Dear Mrs., last name. I know this is unsolicited, but as someone who respects the sanctity of family, I felt compelled to ask. Do you happen to know what your husband is doing in his locked office between 4 o'clock and 5 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays? It may be worth asking him about his supplemental duties. Sincerely, a concerned colleague. I sent it to 3 of them, the wives of Cameron Thorne's top lieutenants. I intentionally left out Trevor Sterling's wife. My war with him would be more direct. This was about destabilizing the foundation. Then, we waited. We didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, Isaac, who still had some passive monitoring capabilities, sent me a frantic message. All hell is breaking loose, he wrote. The internal chat system is on fire. One of the managers, a guy named Peterson, came into the office this morning looking like he'd been run over by a truck. Heard he got kicked out of his house. Another one, Davies, canceled all his meetings. Rumor is his wife shredded his entire collection of custom-tailored suits. I felt a grim satisfaction. It was working. The poison was spreading. These men, so confident and powerful in their corner offices, were now facing an insurrection on the home front. Their lies were catching up to them in the one place they couldn't control with money and NDAs. The beauty of the attack was its deniability. Was it a disgruntled ex-employee, a rival firm, a PA who'd grown a conscience? They had no idea where the shot had come from. The paranoia in their ranks must have been palpable. They would start looking at each other, at their assistants, with suspicion. The trust that held their corrupt little club together was beginning to erode. Angela called me that afternoon. I just got a call from a colleague, she said, a note of amusement in her voice. He represents Mrs. Davies. She's filing for divorce. It seems she's suddenly very interested in a full forensic accounting of her husband's finances, specifically his bonus compensation. It was the first crack in their wall of silence. The first brick dislodged from their fortress. I knew this was just the beginning. I had disrupted their private lives. Now it was time to go after their public ones. But as I savored this small victory, I had no idea that Fiona was about to launch a counterattack of her own, one aimed directly at my heart. I should have known Fiona wouldn't go down without a fight. I had underestimated her ruthlessness. While I was busy sowing chaos in other people's marriages, she was sharpening her own knives, preparing a strike against my most vulnerable point. Olivia. After our confrontation, I had moved into a sterile, temporary corporate apartment downtown that Angela had arranged. The house, my house, was an emotional minefield I couldn't bear to walk through yet. Fiona had stayed, a squatter in the ruins of our life. We communicated only through terse text messages, mostly about Olivia. The first sign of trouble came on a Friday. I was supposed to pick Olivia up from school and have her for the weekend. 15 minutes before school let out, I got a text from Fiona. Change of plans. Liv is feeling under the weather. She wants to stay home with me. I called immediately. It went to voicemail. I called the school. They confirmed Olivia had been picked up by Fiona 20 minutes earlier. My blood ran cold. When I finally got Fiona on the phone, her voice was syrupy sweet, laced with poison. "Marcus, darling, you're upsetting her. All this unpleasantness. She's a sensitive child. She needs her mother right now." The following week, the attacks became more insidious. Olivia called me, her little voice hesitant and confused. Mommy said you're trying to make her lose her job, Daddy. She said you're being mean to her friends at work. Is that true?" My heart broke. "No, sweetie." "Of course not. It's complicated. It's grown-up stuff. How do you explain systemic corporate corruption and institutionalized adultery to an 80-year-old? Fiona was poisoning my daughter against me. She was painting me as the villain, the destructive force tearing their stable world apart. She was using our child as a human shield, a pawn in a game I hadn't even realized we were playing. It was a brilliant, monstrously cruel move. The worst came that Sunday. I was dropping Olivia back at the house after a tense, quiet weekend where she barely looked at me. As Olivia ran inside, Fiona came to the door. She looked tired but defiant. "This stops now, Marcus," she hissed, her voice low so Olivia couldn't hear. "Whatever game you're playing, you're going to stop it, or you'll lose her for good. I'll tell her everything you're doing. I will make sure she sees you as the monster who destroyed her family." "I'm the monster?" I was incredulous. "You sold yourself for a fucking diamond necklace? And I'm the monster? You're a man who can't handle a strong woman's success," she shot back, her eyes glinting with malice. "And a family court judge is going to see it the same way. The unstable, vengeful husband or the stable, providing mother. Who do you think they'll choose?" She was threatening to use my quest for justice against me in our custody battle. She would twist my rage into an instability, my plans into a vendetta that made me an unfit father. It was a checkmate move. I drove away from that house feeling a despair deeper than anything I'd felt before. The rage was still there, but now it was tempered with a terrifying fear. What was the point of burning down their world if I lost my own in the process? What good was victory if the price was my daughter's love? That night, I sat in my soulless apartment staring at a picture of Olivia on my phone. Her bright, innocent smile, I felt trapped. Fiona had built a wall around me, using my own child as the bricks and mortar. For a moment, I considered giving up, calling Angela, telling her to stop everything just to get my daughter back. But then the architect in me took over again. A wall isn't an obstacle. It's a design challenge. You don't have to run through it. You can go over it, you can go under it, or you can find the keystone and bring the whole thing down at once. Fiona thought she was in control. She thought she had me cornered. But her gambit had only strengthened my resolve. She had made it personal in a way I hadn't anticipated. She hadn't just betrayed me as a husband. She was now failing as a mother. And that was a sin I could never forgive. The fight wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about rescue. I had to tear down their rotten empire, not just for my own vindication, but to save my daughter from the toxic influence of the woman her mother had become. The time for whispers was over. It was time to make some noise. Fiona's gambit had accelerated my timeline. I couldn't afford a long, drawn-out war of attrition. I needed to land a significant blow, something public, something that would shake the foundations of Marble City Fund and show them I wasn't bluffing. Angela had a contact. A guy named Ben Carter, a seasoned financial journalist at a major national newspaper. He wasn't a gossip columnist. He was a serious investigative reporter with a reputation for sinking his teeth into corporate malfeasance and not letting go. "He's smart and he's hungry," Angela said as we sat in her office, putting the final touches on our package. "But he won't run with just rumors. We need to give him something concrete, but not everything. This is a hook, not the whole fish." We carefully curated the first leak. We couldn't reveal the entire PA system yet. That was our earthquake. This was the first tremor, designed to get the ground shaking. We put together a dossier that was damning but deniable. It included anonymous, redacted bank statements showing the unusually large and frequent bonuses paid to several female assistants. A list of high-ticket luxury purchases, cars, jewelry, vacations made by these assistants, purchases that were wildly out of sync with their official salaries. We got this from social media forensics and public records. An internal memo, one we'd found in Isaac's data trove, from Cameron Thorne praising the unparalleled loyalty and personal commitment of his support staff, with language that was just vague enough to be suspicious. The package was a masterpiece of implication. It didn't explicitly state what was happening, but it painted a picture of a bizarre and ethically questionable corporate culture where secretaries were somehow earning more than junior traders. Angela sent it to Ben Carter through a secure, anonymous channel. "The source is a disillusioned former employee who fears retaliation," was the only message attached. We waited. For a week, there was nothing. I started to get nervous. Had he dismissed it? Had the firm's PR machine gotten to him first? Then, on a Wednesday morning, the tremor hit. The article appeared on the front page of the newspaper's business section. The headline was cautious but sharp. "Unusual generosity. Questions raised over boutique funds, lavish compensation culture." Carter had done his job perfectly. He didn't mention names, but he described Marble City Fund's location and market position so precisely that anyone in the financial world would know exactly who he was talking about. He quoted anonymous industry insiders who called the bonus structure highly irregular and a potential red flag for investors. He detailed the lavish lifestyles of unnamed support staff and questioned how such compensation was justified on the company's books. He concluded with the money shot, a single, devastating question. In an industry where every penny is accounted for, investors might begin to ask, what exactly is Marble City Fund paying for? The effect was immediate. I was tracking the firm's stock price on my laptop and I watched it dip. Not a crash, but a noticeable nervous tremor. It dropped a few points, then a few more. Isaac messaged me, his text buzzing with excitement. "You should see this place. It's a morgue. Thorne has been in closed-door meetings all morning. Sterling looks like he's seen a ghost." It was a beautiful sight to imagine. The untouchable kings in their castle, suddenly realizing the walls weren't as thick as they thought. They were exposed. They didn't know how or by whom, but they knew they were being watched. That evening I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" It was Fiona. Her voice wasn't angry or sad. It was cold, reptilian. "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said, my own voice a mask of calm indifference. "Don't play dumb with me, Marcus. This has your fingerprints all over it. This architectural precision. You're going to regret this. You have no idea the hornet's nest you've just kicked." "Is that a threat, Fiona?" There was a pause. "It's a promise," she said, and hung up. I put the phone down, a slow smile spreading across my face. She was scared. They were all scared. The first tremor had shaken them. They were rattled. Good, because the earthquake was coming next. The first article was a tremor. What came next was the earthquake. The panic inside Marble City Fund after Ben Carter's article was our window of opportunity. Cameron Thorne and his cronies were in damage control mode, trying to reassure their nervous investors and plug the leaks. They were distracted. They thought the worst was over. They had no idea we were about to hit them with a seismic charge. The target this time wasn't just their reputation, it was their business model, their lifeblood, the very thing that made them feel invincible, their clients' money. Angela and I spent a weekend poring over the financial data Isaac had extracted. It was a labyrinth of shell accounts, discretionary funds, and coded transactions. To me, it looked like gibberish. To Angela, with her background in corporate litigation, it was a roadmap to their crimes. "Here it is," she said, her finger tracing a line on her monitor. It was late on a Saturday night in her office. The only light came from our laptop screens, casting long shadows on the walls. This is how they do it. The bonuses for the PAs aren't paid from operating revenue. That would be too obvious, too easy to track. They're paid out of a client appreciation and expense fund. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," she said, a grim smile on her face, "that they're using their clients' investment money to pay for their prostitutes. They're skimming from the management fees, funneling it into this slush fund, and then paying out the bonuses. It's not just immoral, it's wire fraud. It's a direct violation of SEC regulations. It's a federal crime. This was the charge that would bring the whole building down." This moved the story from the society pages to the front page. We compiled a new, much more potent dossier for Ben Carter. This one contained the smoking gun email from Thorne, a selection of incriminating calendars, and most importantly, Angela's annotated analysis of the slush fund, showing a direct correlation between money flowing out of the client fund and bonuses flowing into the PA's bank accounts. We sent the package. The title was simple, Follow the Money. The reaction was faster and more furious than I could have ever imagined. Ben Carter must have worked around the clock. The earthquake hit 2 days later. The headline was explosive. Marble City Fund under scrutiny for alleged misuse of client funds in bonus payouts. The article laid out the entire scheme. It was no longer about implication. It was about accusation. It detailed the PA system, the supplemental duties, and the criminal way it was all funded. It didn't name Fiona or the other women, referring to them only as female support staff. But the message was unmistakable. The stock market reacted with brutal efficiency. When the market opened, Marble City Fund stock didn't just dip, it plummeted. It was a nosedive, a freefall. The digital ticker looked like a torrent of red ink. Investors panicked. The phones at the firm must have been ringing off the hook. People weren't just questioning the firm's ethics anymore. They were questioning the safety of their money. By noon, the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, announced it was launching a formal investigation into Marble City Fund's accounting practices. Cameron Thorne, the untouchable patriarch, was forced to issue a statement. He appeared on TV, looking haggard and old. He called the allegations baseless and the work of a disgruntled former employee with a vendetta. He was trying to pin it all on Isaac. It was a fatal mistake. He had just given our anonymous source a motive and a face, and he had just given Ben Carter the justification to publish his final, most devastating piece. The hornet's nest Fiona had warned me about was now fully kicked, and the hornets were swarming. But they weren't coming for me. They were coming for them. Thorne's desperate attempt to blame Isaac was the gasoline on the fire. It gave Ben Carter the narrative hook he needed to unleash the full force of his investigation. The next day's article wasn't just a story. It was an indictment. The headline dominated the front page of the paper. Inside the unspoken order, How Marble City Fund Bought Silence and Sex. This time, there were names. The article was a brutal, meticulous takedown. It published excerpts from the calendars, redacting only last names but leaving enough for anyone involved to know they were exposed. Private meeting Trevor S. and Fiona V. It published Thorne's email about supplemental duties in its entirety. It painted a vivid, sickening picture of life inside the firm. The degradation, the power dynamics, the transactional nature of it all. But Carter, guided by Angela's legal insight, framed it brilliantly. He didn't portray the women as simple victims, but as willing participants in a corrupt system, complicit in the fraud that funded their lifestyles. This protected us from any potential libel suits and, more importantly, it was the truth. And then came the final paragraph, the one that sealed their fate. It named Trevor Sterling and Fiona Vance as the prime example of the system, the handsome, charismatic manager and his beautiful, ambitious assistant. It even mentioned the diamond necklace from the Christmas party, a detail I had given Carter that grounded the entire sordid affair in a tangible, relatable symbol of betrayal. My wife and her lover were now the poster children for a national scandal. The article went viral. It was picked up by every major news network. Cable news channels ran segments all day, with pundits debating the ethics and legality of it all. The name Marble City Fund became synonymous with sleaze and corruption. I watched it unfold from the detached safety of my apartment. It was surreal, like watching a building I had designed be demolished on live television. I saw Trevor Sterling's face plastered on the screen, his perfect smile now looking like a desperate rictus. I saw a file photo of Fiona, beautiful and smiling, now attached to a story of greed and infidelity. I felt nothing. The rage had burned itself out, leaving a cold, clean emptiness. This wasn't about them anymore. This was about gravity. I had simply removed the supports, and the corrupt structure was now collapsing under its own weight. Isaac called me, his voice a mix of terror and exhilaration. My phone is ringing off the hook. Reporters, lawyers, I hung up on all of them. What do I do? You do nothing, Angela had instructed him. You are the aggrieved party, wrongly terminated. Let them come to you. You are now a valuable witness. The firestorm raged. Investors pulled out their money in a mass exodus. The firm's value evaporated. The empire that Cameron Thorne had spent a lifetime building was turning to ash in a matter of days. The final, inevitable news came on a Friday, exactly 1 week after the first article. Marble City Fund, unable to stop the bleeding, had its assets frozen by the SEC and was filing for bankruptcy protection. It was over. The fortress had fallen. The order had collapsed. I shut my laptop. The noise from the TV was just static. I walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline. The world was still turning. The sun was setting. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a victim or a warrior. I just felt quiet. The demolition was complete. Now I had to figure out how to live in the silence that followed. The rain was falling in sheets, a gray curtain drawn over the city. It was the kind of day that matched the mood inside me, cleansed, but cold and empty. I was at the house, packing up the last of Olivia's things. The place felt hollow, an empty stage where a tragedy had played out. The memories were ghosts that no longer had the power to haunt me. The doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Fiona stood on the porch, drenched and shivering. The designer coat was gone, replaced by a simple raincoat. The perfect hair was plastered to her head. The makeup was gone, and without it she looked her age, tired and defeated. The fire in her eyes had been extinguished, leaving only a desperate, hollowed-out look. She wasn't the confident, cutting woman who had dismissed me as a fool. She was just a wreck. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside without a word. She walked into the foyer of the house we had once shared. Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the moving boxes stacked against the walls. "What? What are you doing?" she asked. "The bank is foreclosing," I said flatly. "The house was purchased with a mortgage based on our joint income. And your income, as I understand it, no longer exists." The reality of her situation seemed to hit her then. This wasn't just a career setback. This was total annihilation. "They fired me," she said, her voice trembling. "They called me into a room with 3 lawyers. They said I violated the company's code of conduct. They terminated me for cause. My accounts are frozen. Trevor won't even take my calls. He's gone." She looked at me, her eyes filling with the tears I had seen before. But this time, they weren't for show. This time they were real, the tears of a gambler who has lost everything. "I'm so sorry, Marcus," she sobbed, taking a step toward me. "I was a fool. I was so stupid. I lost everything. I lost you. I lost Olivia. Please, please, can you ever forgive me?" I looked at the woman crying in front of me. I searched for some flicker of the woman I had loved, some ember of the life we had shared. But there was nothing. The person I had married was gone, replaced by this stranger, and I felt no anger, no hatred, not even pity, just a vast, echoing emptiness. I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake, imagining this moment. It imagined screaming at her, throwing her betrayal in her face. I'd imagined a moment of triumphant, righteous fury, but the reality was just quiet and sad. "Forgiveness, Fiona," I said, my voice soft but firm, "is something you're going to have to find for yourself. It's not mine to give." I walked to the front door and opened it. The rain was still coming down, a relentless, cleansing torrent. "What I wanted was justice," I said, looking out into the gray afternoon. "And in a way, I guess we both got it." She stared at me, her face a mask of disbelief and despair. She had come here for a lifeline, for absolution, for a way back. But the bridge was gone. I had burned it myself. She walked past me, out into the rain, a solitary figure disappearing into the storm. I closed the door, the click of the latch echoing in the empty house. The demolition was over. The site was cleared. But now I stood alone in the rubble, and for the first time I had to confront the true cost of my victory. The days that followed the collapse were strange. The world was abuzz with the fallout from the Marble City Fund scandal. But my life had become intensely quiet. The war was over. The strategic planning, the late-night sessions, the constant thrum of adrenaline, it was all gone. And in its place was a silence that was both a relief and a burden. I was living in the corporate apartment, a place with no memories and no personality. I'd spend my days working on new architectural designs, trying to lose myself in the clean lines and logical problems, but my mind felt untethered. The righteous anger that had been my engine for so long had run out of fuel. One evening there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find Angela Hayes standing there. She wasn't dressed in her usual power suit. She was wearing simple jeans and a soft gray sweater. In her hands, she held 2 large paper bags from a Thai restaurant. "I figured you were living on coffee and spite," she said with a small, wry smile. "Thought you could use some actual food." "You didn't have to do that," I said, stepping aside to let her in. "I know," she said simply. "I'm not billing you for this." We sat on the floor of the Spartan living room, eating pad thai straight from the containers. The formal barrier between lawyer and client seemed to dissolve in the comfortable silence. "How are you, Marcus?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Really?" I looked around the empty apartment. "I feel like I just finished a 10-year project and I don't know what to build next." "You won," she said. "You did what you set out to do. You should be proud." "Am I?" I looked at her, the question genuine. "I destroyed my wife's life. I put a lot of people out of work. I blew up my family." "You didn't destroy anything that wasn't already rotten, Marcus," she countered, her gaze direct and unflinching. "You exposed the truth. The people who got hurt were the ones who profited from the lies. Fiona made her choices. Thorne and Sterling made theirs. You just held them accountable." We talked for hours. We didn't talk about the case, or legal strategy, or what came next. We talked about architecture, about her growing up in Atlanta, about bad movies and good books. I learned that behind the formidable lawyer was a woman with a dry wit and a surprising warmth. I felt a tension I hadn't realized I was carrying begin to ease. For the first time in months, I felt like a person again, not just a weapon. As she was getting ready to leave, she stood by the door, and there was a moment of awkward hesitation. The evening had shifted something between us. We weren't just lawyer and client anymore. We were something else. "Thank you, Angela," I said, "for everything. Not just the legal stuff, for this." I gestured to the empty food containers. "You're welcome, Marcus," she said softly. The space between us crackled with an unspoken energy. It was new and fragile. I wasn't ready for it, not really. I was still surveying the wreckage of my own life. But the pull was undeniable. On a pure, unthinking impulse, I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a kiss of wild passion. There was no fire, no urgency. It was soft and hesitant and deeply surprising. It was a kiss that tasted of green curry and shared understanding. It was a question more than a statement. She didn't pull away. For a moment, she simply accepted it. Then, she gently rested her hand on my chest and broke the kiss. Her eyes were soft, filled with an emotion I couldn't quite name. "You're not ready, Marcus," she whispered, not as a rejection, but as a tender observation. "And I'm not a rebound. When you're ready, when you've finished clearing the rubble, call me." She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "And this time I might even bill you." She left, closing the door softly behind her. I stood there for a long moment, my fingers touching my lips. She was right. I wasn't ready. The demolition was over, but the rebuilding had yet to begin. But for the first time, standing in the quiet of my empty apartment, I felt a flicker of hope. A foundation had been laid. The storm had passed, and in the distance I could just begin to see the first, faint light of a new day. The final act of the Marble City Fund saga played out not with a bang, but with the dry, rustling sound of legal papers. The media firestorm had done its work. The company was a corpse, and now the vultures, lawyers, regulators, and creditors were circling to pick the bones clean. Angela handled my divorce proceedings with the surgical precision of a master. With the mountain of evidence we had, Fiona's legal position was non-existent. Her lawyers, seeing the writing on the wall, pushed for a quick settlement. In the end, it was a clean sweep. I was granted full physical and legal custody of Olivia. The court-appointed child psychologist had seen through Fiona's manipulation, concluding that her recent behavior demonstrated a profound lack of judgment, detrimental to the child's well-being. The house, our beautiful, tainted house, was sold off to pay the debts, and any remaining equity came to me. Fiona walked away with nothing but her personal effects and a name now synonymous with scandal. Meanwhile, the federal case against Marble City Fund's leadership moved forward. Cameron Thorne, the old patriarch, saw his legacy turn to ash. He was indicted on multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Trevor Sterling, stripped of his charm and his money, faced the same charges. Their pictures were now mugshots, their tailored suits replaced by ill-fitting courtroom attire. They were no longer titans of finance, they were just common criminals. The day my divorce was finalized, Angela called me. "It's done, Marcus," she said, her voice professional but with an undercurrent of warmth. "You're a free man." A free man. The words felt strange, oversized. The war was officially over. I had won on every front. I had custody of my daughter, my financial security was intact, and the people who had wronged me were facing ruin. So why did victory feel so quiet? That night, I picked up Olivia from my parents, where she'd been staying to shield her from the worst of the fallout. On the drive back to my new permanent apartment, a place I had chosen for its good school district and big windows, she was quiet. "Is Mommy going to jail?" she asked, her small voice piercing the silence. I pulled the car over. I turned and looked at my daughter, this innocent soul caught in the shrapnel of our war. "No, sweetie," I said gently. "Mommy's not going to jail. She made some mistakes, and she needs some time to figure things out. But she still loves you. Very much." It was the first time I had spoken of Fiona without anger or bitterness. It was just a statement of fact. In that moment, I realized the final battle wasn't in a courtroom. It was right here, in my own heart. It was the battle to let go of the hate, not for Fiona's sake, but for mine, and for Olivia's. Vengeance had gotten me this far. But it couldn't be the foundation for a new life. It was time to build something else. The rubble of my old life became the foundation for my new one. The settlement from the divorce, combined with the capital from my now thriving architecture firm, gave me an opportunity. I wasn't just an architect anymore. I was a man with resources and a hard-won education in the darker side of business. I decided to stop just designing buildings for other people. I wanted to build for myself on my own terms. I found advanced design and development. The company's mission was simple: to acquire undervalued properties, redesign them with integrity and sustainable materials, and build beautiful, functional spaces for people to live and work in. It was a tangible, honest business. You couldn't hide corruption inside a steel beam or fake the quality of reclaimed hardwood floors. My first official hire was Isaac Bell. I met him for lunch, and he was a changed man. The nervous, twitchy energy was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. He'd been a star witness for the SEC, and his testimony had been crucial in securing the indictments against Thorne and Sterling. "I owe you everything, Marcus," he said over lunch. "No, you don't," I corrected him. "You earned this. You had the courage to do the right thing. Now I have a proposition for you. I need a chief technology officer, someone to build our digital infrastructure from the ground up, with an emphasis on security and transparency. Someone I can trust implicitly." His eyes widened. "Me? I'm just an IT guy." "You're the best IT guy I know," I said with a grin. "And you've proven you have a moral compass. That's more valuable than any degree. What do you say?" He accepted on the spot. Together we started building. We hired a small, dedicated team. We found our first project, a derelict warehouse by the river that I had a vision to turn into stunning residential lofts. The work was consuming in the best way possible. It was creative, constructive. Every day, I was building something new instead of tearing something down. I was replacing the ghosts of the past with the solid reality of blueprints, budgets, and building permits. I was so focused on building my new company that I almost forgot to build my new life. One Friday afternoon, my phone rang. It was Angela. "I'm calling to cash in that rain check," she said, her voice warm and direct. "You've been clearing the rubble for 6 months, Marcus. How about we see what's underneath?" My heart skipped a beat. "I'd like that." "Good," she said. "I'll make a reservation. And don't worry, this one's on me." Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant with checkered tablecloths and flickering candles. We didn't talk about work or the law. We talked about dreams, about what we wanted our lives to look like. I saw her not as my lawyer or my ally, but as a brilliant, funny, and beautiful woman. At the end of the night, she walked me to my door. The kiss this time was different. It wasn't hesitant or questioning. It was sure and deep and full of a promise of what could be. It was the feeling of a new foundation finally settling, strong and true. The last loose end was the hardest. The final custody hearing was mostly a formality, but Fiona had requested to speak with me privately beforehand. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met in a sterile, empty conference room at the family court. She looked diminished. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a simple, ill-fitting dress. She was thinner, and there were dark circles under her eyes. The weight of her choices had finally settled on her. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice quiet. "Fiona." We sat in silence for a long moment. "I'm not here to ask for anything," she began, twisting a tissue in her hands. "I know I've lost that right. I wanted you to know that I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did, the choices I made." She finally looked up, and for the first time I saw genuine remorse in her eyes. Not self-pity, but a deep, painful understanding of the damage she had caused. "It wasn't about the money, not really," she said. "Not at first. It was the power, the feeling of being on the inside, of being special. Trevor, Thorne, they made me feel seen, important. And you were always so good, so decent, and a part of me resented you for it, because I knew I wasn't." It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. It didn't erase the pain, but it put it in a context I could almost understand. "All I want, Marcus," she said, her voice breaking, "is a chance to be a mother to Olivia again. Someday. I know I have to earn that. I just need to know. Is that door closed forever?" I thought of the bitter, vengeful man I had been, the man who wanted to see her utterly destroyed. But that man was gone. In his place was a father who had to do what was best for his daughter. And what was best for Olivia was not to grow up hating her own mother. "The door isn't closed, Fiona," I said, and the words felt right. They felt true. "But you're right. You have to earn it, for Olivia's sake. Start with your therapy. Get your life back on track. Be someone she can be proud of again. We'll start with supervised visits, and we'll see where it goes." A single tear rolled down her cheek. "Thank you," she whispered. It was a strange kind of peace. Not forgiveness, but a release. I was finally, truly, letting go of the past. I walked out of that room feeling lighter than I had in years. The last ghost had been laid to rest. A year can change everything. I'm writing this from the deck of my new house. It's not the house I built for Fiona. This one is different. It's perched on a hill overlooking the city, built of glass and cedar and warm stone. I designed every inch of it, not as a fortress, but as a space full of light and air. It's a home built on a foundation of truth. Vance design and development is a success. The warehouse loft sold out before construction was even finished. We're breaking ground on 2 new projects next month. Isaac is a genius, and more importantly, a loyal friend. Olivia is thriving. She's 9 now, bright and happy. She's in therapy herself, learning to process the trauma of the past year. She sees Fiona once a week with a supervisor. It's a slow process, but it's a start. She knows her mother made mistakes, but she also knows she is loved. That's all I ever wanted for her. Angela is inside making dinner. Her laugh drifts out through the open sliding glass door, mingling with the sound of Olivia chasing fireflies in the backyard. The severe lawyer's haircut is gone, replaced by softer, longer waves. The charcoal power suits are usually replaced by comfortable jeans, at least when she's here. We're getting married in the fall, a small ceremony right here on this deck. She walks out, carrying 2 glasses of wine, and hands one to me. She follows my gaze to where Olivia is squealing with delight as a firefly lands on her hand. "It's a good life, Marcus Vance," she says softly, leaning her head on my shoulder. My phone buzzes on the table. It's a text from a major new investor, interested in partnering on a downtown revitalization project. Work is calling. Life is calling. I ignore it for now. I wrap my arm around Angela, pulling her close. I watch my daughter, her face illuminated by the magical fleeting light of a firefly. The air is warm, the sky is clear, and for the first time in a very long time, my heart is completely, irrevocably at peace. I didn't just tear down a corrupt empire. I built a new world from its ashes, and it's a world I am proud to call home.